The exchange variation with e takes d6 is a reliable system for white, although as we noted, black has no shortage of interesting ideas to generate counter chances. White's most radical response to d6 is the ultra-aggressive 4-pawns attack with f4. White commits to an all-or-nothing approach, maximizing the central space initiative, intending to roll black off the board. This is a double-edged decision, as white continues to only move pawns during the opening stage. Black intends to try and prove these pawns are overextended and vulnerable to counterattack. The truth lies somewhere in the middle, as white can certainly challenge black's defenses, but in so doing, black is allowed active counterplay leading to sharp, at times chaotic play. Against the 4-pawns attack, black may investigate the radical pawn sacrifice g5, trying to break down white's massive center. But black's most reliable path is to exchange pawns with d takes e5. D takes e5 would allow black a favorable exchange of queens on d1, so white should recapture with the f-pawn. By exchanging the d-pawn, black's queen enjoys pressure against the d4 pawn, a key source of black's counterplay in the opening. A provocative, somewhat risky option is to play c5, encouraging d5, preparing to meet it with e6. This line is worth exploring, although white may gain the upper hand with a well-timed advance to d6. A more reliable option is to attack d4 while developing a piece with knight c6, adding a second attacker against d4. Notice that white cannot advance the pawn to d5, as this simply loses a pawn on e5. If white defends e5 with knight f3, intending to play d5, this is well met by bishop g4, pinning the knight to the queen. This means white's most popular choice is bishop e3, reinforcing the center while remaining flexible with the knight on g1. Black must always remain alert for the possibility of d5, but this is not currently a threat while the e5 pawn is hanging. This is a good moment for the light-squared bishop to enter the game with bishop f5, activating the light-squared bishop and creating the possibility of a future knight b4, trying to take advantage of white's weakened light squares. White continues to actively develop with knight c3, supporting the center, as well as a future d5 advance. Notice the premature knight b4 is well met by rook c1, supporting the c2 square, when knight b4 is simply a loss of time. Now that the light-squared bishop has entered the action, black can support the center without blocking its development with e6, fighting for control over the d5 square. The immediate d5 is still a premature choice, not only because black can capture the unprotected e5 pawn, but the knight may also punish white's careless pawn advance with knight b4. This is a dream scenario for black against the 4-pawns attack. Knight c2 check is in the air, while white's advanced d5 pawn is attacked 4 times. White's center is simply overextended and about to collapse, the risk of pushing several pawns in the opening phase. Rather than the premature advanced d5, white may modestly develop with bishop e2, or simply play knight f3, supporting the center, possibly preparing straightforward development with bishop e2 and kingside castling. Since the bishop has already moved to the f5 square, spending another tempo on bishop g4 is not as effective. White can simply respond with bishop e2, leading to a pleasant game for white. We have reached an important crossroads. We're about to introduce some incredibly sharp play, so it's worth noting that black may also want to investigate bishop b4, pinning the c3 knight, and discouraging d5, a lesser played but interesting alternative. That being said, black's most common reply is bishop e7. If the center remains stable, as is the case if white plays bishop e2, intending to castle kingside, then black is ready to castle followed by the thematic pawn break f6, as played by Grandmaster Nikita Vityagov. This is a reasonable path with mutual chances, but white may also test black's memory, as well as nerves, with the forcing d5. Provoking the exchanges e takes d5, c takes d5. White has established an impressive-looking advanced center, but this is a double-edged decision as these pawns must be constantly protected by pieces. Black's only move to stay afloat is knight b4, adding pressure against the d5 pawn, as well as threatening a fork on c2. It looks like white's center may be overextended, but things are not so simple as white has the strong reply knight d4, centralizing the knight, protecting the c2 square, as well as attacking the bishop on f5. Since bishop g6 allows the annoying bishop b5 check, Grandmaster Peter Svidler played bishop d7. Supporting the advanced center with queen f3 is an interesting option to explore, but his opponent, Grandmaster Alexander Grischuk, preferred the more forcing option e6. Provoking the exchange is f takes e6, and d takes e6. White's e6 pawn harasses the light-squared bishop, so Grandmaster Svidler played bishop c6. Exerting pressure down the long diagonal, Grandmaster Grischuk threw caution to the wind with the aggressive queen g4. Attacking the g7 pawn and preparing to hunt down the enemy king, Grandmaster Svidler embraced the chaos with bishop h4 check. This leads to razor-sharp play in which both sides must play with tremendous accuracy, as a single slip can spell disaster. Grandmaster Svidler managed to successfully navigate the incredible complications and went on to win this instructive game. Immediately challenging the knight to c4 leads to dynamic positions we just explored, but it's also worth noting that white's most popular choice is to first play d4, gaining more central space while supporting the e5 pawn. Although black may experiment with knight b6, the most common choice is to strike in the center with the familiar pawn break d6. White may continue with c4, leading to the exchange variation, or possibly the chaotic 4-pawns attack. On the other hand, White may prefer to enter the popular modern variation with knight f3. This modest developing move acknowledges the Alekhine's right to exist, and rather than trying to refute Black's opening play, White supports the center with natural development, maintaining flexibility with the exchange e takes d6, as well as the option to chase Black's knight with c4. The modern variation is a popular way to positionally challenge the Alekhine, and Black has no shortage of options to explore. Bishop g4 is a natural idea, although since White is not fully committed to expanding in the center just yet, allowing Black to add serious pressure against the d4 pawn. Bishop e2, unpinning the knight, is a safe and solid choice for White. g6 is another option to consider, preparing to fianchetto the dark-squared bishop. But in this video we're going to introduce the Larsen variation with d takes e5. Named after Danish Grandmaster Bent Larsen, this reveals another point behind developing the knight to f3. White can centralize the knight with knight takes e5. White's active knight adds pressure against the sensitive f7 pawn, so Black would love to exchange this piece. In a famous encounter, Grandmaster Larsen played the immediate knight d7, preparing to exchange knights. Former world champion Mikhail Tal, known for his ingenious attacking play, was understandably tempted to sacrifice the knight on f7. He ultimately decided to avoid this choice, playing bishop c4 instead, eventually leading to a draw. With the aid of modern engines, we now know that knight d7 is a bad move, and that White is fully justified in sacrificing a piece with knight takes f7, exposing the king after king takes f7, with the double attack queen h5 check, forking the king and unprotected knight on d5. Returning the piece allows White an overwhelming advantage, so the king reluctantly marches forward with king e6. White has several tempting options. One powerful choice is c4, attacking the vulnerable knight when Black's exposed king is in serious trouble.